I'm just going to talk about the books that I read that are tatted on my brain, stuck in my brain, on loop in my head. I'm always so in my head about things, and I really need to stop. That is my New Year's resolution. In 2023, I'm going to stop overthinking, and I'm just going to do it. Like, we're just going for it. We're not self-sabotaging in any way. Hi, hello, happy 2023. My name is Ebony. I have an iced coffee, and today I'm just gonna sit and talk about the books that I read in 2022 that have left an impact, have altered my brain chemistry. But I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a beautiful holiday season, and let's just get into it. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to be talking about today is Assembly by Natasha Brown. Assembly follows an unnamed Black woman narrator who is living in London and who is about to go visit her white boyfriend's estate. Essentially, he comes from old money, very wealthy, and she is more of a new money. She really hustled and grinded. She really hustled and climbed the top of her financial firm. But the reason why I really loved Assembly is because the writing was supremely introspective. It was very intimate, and the story grapples with our narrator dealing with microaggressions in the workplace, dealing with being a spokesperson for diversity at her financial firm, and having to outreach to young Black kids and encourage them to follow in a similar career path in which she feels absolutely miserable in, as well as her own mortality. She's grappling with her own mortality throughout the book, and I just found the writing to be so staccatic. I don't even know if that's a word, but just very precise, and it had a rhythm, and it almost read like poetry. It's told in a fragmentary style of writing that jumps timelines a little bit. The way that the book handles these themes and topics of, like I was saying, of racism, of imperialism, of capitalism, the exhausting nature of capitalism, and having to be a cog in the machine, and what that means, and how it exhausts you, and whether or not you want to basically tear apart all of your success as a form of resistance, and how we use our bodies as a form of resistance against all of these things that become political. You know what I'm saying? So it was just an amazing read. Highly recommend it. Check it out. I talk about it a lot on my channel. So up next, I'm going to include my most read author this year, one of their works. Honestly, I loved everything I read by this author. I have not encountered a bad book yet, and that is Elena Ferrante, the author Elena Ferrante. More specifically, My Brilliant Friend, which follows Elena, who's our main character, and Lila. Their friendship in Naples, it is like the 1940s, I want to say, when we first are introduced to them, 1940s or 50s. And the neighborhood vibes, just their friendship. I have not read, or I've read a lot of books on female friendship this year, but this one specifically, I felt like Elena Ferrante accurately captured all of the nuances of female friendships and relationships, especially starting at a young age, in that you have lifelong. But how My Brilliant Friend begins is that the story is told from Elena, or Lenu's perspective, who is our main character, and she is writing in the future, she's writing in the present, recounting the past, recounting how she and Lila's friendship grew over time. And all we know is that Lila, I don't know, her friend has come to the point of disappearing the face of the earth, and we basically see what drove her to that in her life. Very heavy topics are explored, like domestic abuse and violence, so just be aware of that. But the writing, oh my god. And I also read The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante, which is an honorable mention. I love that book, and it was the first Elena Ferrante I read, and it just made me want to read everything that Elena Ferrante has ever written. Up next, we will discuss my very dear fictional friend, Celine, and that is Either Or by Elif Batuman, which came out this year. It was, well, not this year, last year. It was a 2022 release, and it is the sequel to The Idiot, and it's set primarily at Harvard. Like, she always starts off in Harvard and then it follows her into the summer. The Idiot followed her freshman year at Harvard. Either Or follows her sophomore year. I just loved this book. I kind of thought the story or the plot was slow at times, so if you're a person who needs a little something to grasp onto plot-wise to keep reading, you might find it kind of slow. But I thought that Either Or was more exciting than The Idiot because Celine is becoming more self-assured and she is exploring herself a little more, and I just thought that her internal monologue is so relatable, and I just loved what the novel was doing in general. The main question of the novel and the title from which it gets it from is from this book here that I found at the thrift store, and you know it's real because I bought it, Either Or as well, by this author, in which the question that's being posed is whether or not to like live aesthetically or to live morally. And that's basically what Celine is juggling with the entire time. So she has a tendency throughout the novel to get herself into slightly questionable situations, relationships, but it felt very much a part of the whole coming of age thing in college. And I just loved how the novel, like how it was in The Idiot, but I loved how music was also used a lot in Either Or. Like, there was an entire bit in there that talked about Lauryn Hill, among like other musicians that I can't really remember right now. But I loved how Batuman used art and literature as a means to allow Celine to make sense of her own life, which is something that I do, and I think if you are a consumer of booktube or book content in general or a reader, you do as well. So I really found it to be super relatable, loved it, and cannot stop thinking about that question, especially since Celine is aspiring to be a writer, and I think a lot of writers grapple with doing or making like decisions just based on the fact of like being able to live a full life and having experiences to write about. Next, I'm going to talk about Upstream by Mary Oliver. You already know. Mary Oliver had to be on the list without a doubt. First appearance, might I add. There's another appearance later on. But I read Upstream, which was my first like essay collection that I've read from Mary Oliver, and I absolutely loved it. There's an essay in there called Of Power in Time that really helped me become excited about writing. I took a break from writing my own like poetry and things this year, or in 2022, and I just love Mary Oliver. Upstream is just a collection of essays of her thoughts, ruminations on life, on writing, on nature, on some of her favorite authors like Edgar Allan Poe, Walt Whitman. I believe there's an Ernest Hemingway essay in there as well. So yeah, if you're just an appreciator of literature and of life and of nature, then you would love Upstream. I have not stopped recommending Upstream to people. I think that if you are a writer, an artist in any form, and you feel like the pull and connection to nature, I think Mary Oliver is like a great person to read because that's mostly what her work encompasses. And then talking about another one of my all-time faves, I read Time as a Mother by Ocean Vuong, which is the poetry collection Ocean Vuong released this past year in 2022. I'm still not used to saying that, clearly. And Time as a Mother deals with like the loss of his mother, grief, the passage of time, the effects of war on place in which it happens and its inhabitants. Very similar themes presented if you've read Unearthed or Briefly Gorgeous or Night Sky with Exit Wounds, but I just remember exactly where I was while reading Time as a Mother, and I remember what I felt while reading certain poems, and just that like visceral reaction that I had has stuck with me even now. And I read Time as a Mother as soon as it came out. I think it came out in April, and it's been months and I've still been thinking about it. So if you're on the fence about picking up Ocean Vuong, I recommend his poetry for sure. I believe that you can find some of the poems up on like Poetry Foundation from this if you just want to get a little sample before buying the collection. I recommend you do that, but absolutely loved Time as a Mother. I also have to mention another one of my most read authors this year, and that is Toni Morrison. I really fell into a Toni Morrison rabbit hole. I'm still in it. And, you know, I have to mention Sula, which is a story that follows our main character, Sula, and her friendship to, oh my god, I'm totally blanking on her friend's name right now. Oh my god, Toni Morrison's writing, very heavy. Like, if you are familiar with Toni Morrison's work, a lot of us probably read The Bluest Eye in high school. Very similar thing in terms of like just the overall heaviness that you feel while reading. It's a very heavy story. Look up content warnings, but the writing is beautiful. And basically Sula is this character who is just, she doesn't fit into her society in any way. It's set in the early like 1910s, and it goes up until the 1930s, I believe. So it's about this town, the segregated town in Ohio in which Sula and her friend live. They grow up in it. But yeah, it's just an amazing story. It stuck with me. The writing was beautiful. There's passages stuck in my brain about it. Highly recommend that you check out Sula. Toni Morrison, one of my favorite authors that I read in 2022. And up next, I'm going to discuss Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami, which is a book that I read for Women in Translation Month. It's translated from Japanese. The book literally comprises of two separate stories. One, a short story, a novella called Breasts, and the other one called Eggs. So Breasts and Eggs combined make up the entire book. Kawakami's writing is so intimate and poetic. Honestly, I loved Breasts and Eggs for the writing. We're basically following Natsuko's journey towards motherhood in an unconventional way for Japanese society. And I did find that parts of Eggs was very slow. Like, I kind of wished the story had a little more to like propel you forward, but I was so captivated by the writing. Once again, there are scenes literally imprinted on my brain, passages that I think about constantly. So to me, when a story gets stuck in my brain like that, that just means it's a favorite, or it's something that has literally altered my brain's chemistry and has impacted me in such an intimate way that I feel like it has to be a favorite, you know? Or that qualifies it to be a favorite in my eyes. So anyways, that was Breasts and Eggs. And next we're gonna get into some poetry. So just to give you like very brief things, House of Light by Mary Oliver is a poetry collection that I also read this year. Mary Oliver, nature, introspection, the connectiveness of everything, and a sense of spirituality and enlightenment and beauty for the world and appreciation for the world. Loved that. Also, The Carrying by Ada Limon. I read this pretty early on in 2022, and there is one line specifically that is stuck in my brain, one use of like metaphors and imagery, but I absolutely love The Carrying. That was my second Ada Limon poetry collection I've ever read. And then I also just got The Hurting Kind. I feel like I said that so weird. The Hurting Kind, which is Ada Limon's newest poetry collection. She is also the poet laureate of the US right now, so that's pretty amazing. Ada Limon's poetry also feels very intimate and introspective, but more specifically, The Carrying dealt more with like fertility or infertility, of grief, death, nature, love. Next, I'm going to talk about The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, which is a novel in verse. And it was such a good novel. Oh my god, I absolutely loved it. One of my favorites, obviously, of 2022. I'm including it in the vid. But it follows Xiomara, who is a young girl, I believe. We follow her into her freshman year of high school. She is just beginning to find her voice as a young spoken word artist, as a young poet. And she has very conservative, like traditional parents, and her parents are against her pursuing her dreams of being a writer, but she doesn't care. And it's about like that angst and first love. There's an adorable relationship in the story, and oh my god, I listened to the audiobook, which is performed by Elizabeth Acevedo herself, who is an award-winning performance artist for spoken word. And wow, like Xiomara felt very much real and alive to me. Absolutely loved it. It's such a heartwarming story. If you're looking for a story that will give you all of the teenage coming of age feels, definitely read The Poet X. I have not encountered someone who read it and thought it was bad. Like, that's all I have to say. I think it's a phenomenal story, and you should read it or listen to it and do both. Like, read and listen to it at the same time. And my honorable mention will be All's Well by Mona Awad. I just recently finished this book like yesterday in January 4th, but I started reading it December 3rd, and I read most of it in 2022. But when I tell you, my last brain cell that was happening in 2022 did not want to read a single thing the last week of December. That's what happened, so I didn't finish it in time. All's Well follows our main character, Miranda Fitch, who is an adjunct professor at a small liberal arts school in New England. She had to retire from her dream career of being an actress in theater due to taking a very bad fall while portraying Lady Macbeth in Macbeth. And she fell off the stage, which caused her to deal with chronic pain and illness resulting from that. And when we meet her, she is feeling as though no one truly understands her, and she feels like she's complaining all the time because she's constantly in pain and people don't receive that well. And basically we are following her as she is trying to put on a production of All's Well That Ends Well, which is a problem play from Shakespeare. It does not fall under neither the comedy or tragedy category. It's kind of a mix of both. Her students and another faculty member want to put on Macbeth. Of course, she doesn't want to put on Macbeth because that play she has PTSD from, because it literally ended her career, her dream career, and caused her to have chronic pain. So we basically follow her through that, but there's magical realism in this book that I thought was done very well. I do not like magical realism that much in books, but this was satisfying a part of my Shakespearean brain that loves the three witches in Macbeth. Like, I absolutely love Macbeth, favorite Shakespeare play. So, like, having references to Macbeth and other Shakespearean concepts such as all the world's a stage, and the idea of like theater imitating life in the briefness of life and the performance of life, and coinciding that with people like her physical therapist, Miranda's physical therapist, believing that she is acting and that her pain isn't as bad and it's kind of a mind over matter thing. I just thought that the way Mona Awad was drawing the connections was so good. I could do a full in-depth book review on this if you'd like to hear more. If you're interested, I literally just finished it and I haven't fully written out all my thoughts, but I just loved all the Shakespearean allusions. I loved how all of the main characters were women. It took me a while to read, but I just know that this book is going to be something that I think about constantly, and I think it would make an amazing film because Miranda Fitch is your typical unreliable narrator, and you just question everything that she says and does in the book because it becomes outrageous. It's very fever dreamy, and if you're looking for something that is a bit wonky and strange and you're not going to know what's going on 100%, and also if you're a Shakespeare appreciator and lover, then I definitely recommend that you check it out. But yeah, that's it. That concludes my favorite books of 2022. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Once again, I hope you all had an amazing holiday season. Happy 2023, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.
And I was like, yo.